Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we find ourselves in Chicago. You take control of one of the vampire clans and fight to win the support of influential allies and ultimately challenge the throne of Chicago. You'll be playing cards and blood to earn the control of influential humans, feed on them, and make them your servants. Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta is a competitive card game of strategy, bluffing, and deduction for 3 to 5 players, plays in about 30 minutes for ages 14 and up, and published by Horrible Guild. It's on Kickstarter right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works, and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here are prototype. You're going to want to check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video to see all the final art and components. At the beginning of the game, each player will get a deck of a specific faction, and most of this deck, other than just 2 of the cards, are sort of asymmetric. They're specific to that faction. The game is played over 3 rounds. Each round has 5 different phases. The first phase is Harvest, where you're going to collect blood from different allies that you have here. So in this case, we have, these are going to be called victims in the final game. And everyone starts with a victim. It's an active ally. And in the harvest phase, for all the allies that you still have here, you're going to get some blood from them, which is going to, is sort of a currency in the game. So in this case, we're going to get 1 blood and add it to sort of our pool. Now, blood will actually be, tokens as well. So again, prototype here. This also tells you how much influence this card will get you if it's still a living ally at the end of the game. So you're trying to have the most influence at the end of 3 rounds. Now, influence are tokens in this game, and you start with 3 influence to begin the game, but you'll be getting tokens throughout the game, but I'm just going to refer to this as influence. Then you're going to set up each location. There's a certain amount of locations depending on the amount of players. Here with 4 players, there's 3 locations. Now, each of these locations will get an ally from a deck. And this ally, if it's blue, it's a human. And again, it's going to have certain qualities of how much blood they'd give, and we'll talk about feeding on them later. But each one, the winner of this location is going to get to add this ally to their sort of active ally pool. And over the course of the rounds, players are going to be playing cards next to their sort of faction marker here. It shows you who plays the cards where, since we have 4 players, they each have a spot to play the cards. That's going to be playing the cards to try to win enough, have enough power in this location to win that ally. Now, in the other locations, they'll also get allies as well. Some of them might have a red background, and these are vampires. We'll tell you how these differ from the humans in just a moment when we get a little bit deeper into the game. But again, the winner of this location is going to get this ally and some influence. And the last location is always called the Prince's Lair. It's worth more points and such. And you'll see that there's certain things that happen here as well. But this one gets an ally as well. The person that wins this will also get that ally. Then you'll go to hand building. Each player will draw 2 cards from the top of their deck, and they're going to choose one of these to keep and one of them to put at the bottom of their deck. So at this point, each player is going to secretly have a hand of 3 cards. Now, every faction has 2 of the same cards, Hunt and Ready to Fight. Those are sort of starting cards. Everyone has the same ones, but every other player is also going to have 1 card that they just drew from their deck that's different from everybody else's. So everyone has 2 of the same and 1 different for the first round. Now, over the course of the first round, you're going to be deploying these cards, 2 of the 3 that you'll actually play to the different locations that are out there. Then, starting with the player with the ambition token and going clockwise, each player must play one of their cards to one of the 3 locations. Now, when you play a card at a location, it goes next to your faction there, and you can play it either face up or to deceive or bluff your opponents, or to be a little tricky, you don't want them to know what you're doing. You can place it face down, but you must spend 1 blood from your pool to the supply in order to do so. In addition to that, whether you place it face up or face down, you can basically put up to 3 blood on this, out there like this. That's going to add to your blood power, which is going to help with the influence of trying to win this location. And everyone else will go in clockwise, playing a card at one of the locations. Let's say it comes back to us, and we want to play at the same location. We play this one. Let's say we do it face up. This is on the prowl. It's going to give us 3 towards the sort of power influence of this area. But it also has an ability, like when an opponent plays a clan card at this location, we place a blood from the reserve into the play area at this location. Essentially, we'd be adding to sort of the blood power every time somebody adds a clan here. So now this would only activate if it's face up, right? So you wouldn't necessarily want to really put this face down and pay to do so unless you're really trying to sort of misdirect the other players of what you might be playing. Once each player has played 2 cards in this first round, we're going to go through each location, starting with the first one, and go through some different phases. First, we're going to go through a stage called Withdraw, where the players are going to decide, based upon what they can see out there, know what they've played, whether they want to stay and fight or whether they want to withdraw. So each player has a card that allows them to withdraw or stay, and they're going to secretly select one of those, put it face down, and then they're all going to, flip them up at the same time and see who's going to stay and who's going to withdraw. So let's say this player only had 1 card, they were the only one to withdraw. They'd take their blood back into their pool, they would flip this card face up, and it would go to the Prince's Lair, which is the last location to resolve in the round. So they'll actually put it all the way there on the cards that they played there, face up. So they'd go ahead and put it there at that last location, the Prince's Lair. That will get resolved at the end of the round. Then once everyone's had the chance to withdraw, all the other players that stayed will flip over all the cards that were face down, and then we'll resolve these in some different steps. Then you'll look for any cards that have this icon on it. This happens now, which is the preparation of this resolution phase. And basically it happens if more than one player has one of those. The one that has the ambition token will take it, or whoever's closest to it clockwise will go. And they'll do that. So this is ready to fight, has 0 power there. And it says place 2 from the reserve on your player at this location. So it's adding blood power to this, which is giving you a little bit more sort of power in this location here. Then there's other ones that have a black border here that happen now. This is sort of triggering the conflict and then seeing who's going to win. This doesn't have any specific ability, but it is adding 2. So now everyone's going to calculate their total power. It's the numbers of the cards there plus any blood power they have. So this player just has 2 total. And we have 3 plus 0 plus 2, 4, 6. So we actually have 9. So it was a little overkill here. We probably didn't need to have that much blood power there. So the winner is going to get this ally and place it next to their mat in front of them. Now we'll talk about what these can do a little bit later, but you also will get an influence for that, which essentially is a point. Now whoever came in second, which is this player, will actually get one of the victims to add to their alliance, and they'll also get 1 influence. And the points that they'll get will sort of ramp up in the rounds 2 and 3 as well. And if there was someone in 3rd place, they just get 1 influence. Then anyone that has cards with the moon, then Aftermath is going to trigger, and this will happen. Like the winner of this location has to pay you 2 blood or 1 influence. Well, that's no problem. We had quite a bit of blood. We could just pay this to them. That would go into their reserve, their blood pool near their faction map. Then you'd resolve the 2nd location, and then the last one in this case with the 4-player game, the Prince's Lair. And whoever wins this one, same thing happens, but they also get an additional influence for winning this last one. And also keep in mind that as players withdraw, they're going to be moving them to this lair, so this one tends to be the biggest battle. Now, after all the locations have been resolved, you go to the end of the round where any blood power that you have out here goes back to the supply. It does not go back to your own blood pool because you've spent it. And everyone takes the cards that they've played back into their hand because you're going to be building upon your hand as the rounds go on. Now these cards would be in your hand. I just want to remind you that we had 3 cards on our hand, and towards the beginning of this next round, again, we're going to draw 2 cards from the top of our deck. We're going to select one to secretly keep, and we'll put the other one at the bottom. So now we have 4 cards, so this next round we're going to play 3 cards by default, and in the last round, the 3rd round, again, we'll keep all these cards, we'll draw 2, we'll pick 1, so we'll have a total of 5 cards, and we'll play 4. So the game it ramps up as the game goes on. You'll be playing 1 additional card each round, but players will know which cards you have, but they won't know which one you got that round, and that's a part of the strategy of what are they going to do with the ones I know, and what are they going to bluff or not. Now that you know the basics, I want to talk about another interesting strategy in the game, which is called feeding. Now, I told you at the beginning of each round you harvest, and you'll get a certain amount of blood here from them. And if they stay here alive, you'll get this many influence, essentially points at the end of the game. Well, during your turn, pretty much anytime you want, you can feed on these. And so what you'll do is you can take this and you could essentially feed on it. So essentially you are killing them. But what you're gaining is 3 blood immediately that you can use. But this is going from being 1 point at the end of the game to none. So if I fed on this, I would immediately get 3 blood, and it would go like that. If I fed on this one, it's going to be not worth 3 points in the end, but 2. Now, I didn't get anything for the harvest here, but if I feed on Ed Crawford, the human ally, I will get 4 blood that I can use pretty much immediately, and I'll get 2 points at the end of the game instead of 3. So essentially it's costing you a point, but you're getting 4 blood to use as you see fit. Now, to make this even more interesting, the red cards are vampires, and feeding on vampires is the most heinous crime. So this would give you 3 points at the end. If you feed on the vampire, you're going to get 1 point at the end. He gives you 0 in the harvest, but he gives you +3. Some of them actually have abilities too, like when you get this ally, steal 2 from each opponent at this location. But if you feed on a vampire, again, it's the most heinous crime. You're going to take one of these tokens. Now, this is going to be worth -1 point at the end of the game. However, you can use these tokens to, you'd flip it, and then you'd be able to add a blood to a card that you've placed. So let's say we had played this card and we put 3 blood from our reserve, our blood pool here as blood power. If we flip this over, we get 1 blood from the supply. It's not even from ours, and we get to add it here for more power. This will flip over at the end of the round. We can use it, but again, each one of these is a negative point at the end of the game. So it has like a negative, but it also has a positive as well. Now, one more aspect of the game is frenzied. If you ever lose your last blood because people steal it from you or things like that, you go into frenzy mode, which means you're going to take your cards, you're going to shuffle them up, and you're going to immediately feed on one of them. And again, if it's a vampire, you'll get another one of these tokens. You will get the blood from it, like normal, but you will take another token because it's a vampire. So that puts you in frenzy mode, which is another thing you can sort of force on an opponent. It makes them feed when maybe they didn't really want to. And at the end of the 3rd round, that's the end of the game, you're going to add up all the influence tokens you have, you're going to add up all the influence on the active allies, and you're going to add up all the influence on the dead allies. You're going to subtract a point for each one of these tokens you got for feeding on a vampire, and whoever has the most influence at the end is the winner. Now, since every faction is different, I'm going to just show you 2 or 3 faction cards, the specific ones, not the starter cards, and you can just pause if you like to see what some of these abilities do. Well, there you have Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta, and as I showed in the overview, you're building up your hand of cards over the 3 rounds, trying to react, outthink, and bluff your way to victory. If you'd like to see the final art components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me in the description of this video, and it will take you to the Kickstarter project page, and I'm sure the fine folks at Horrible Guild would love your support.